Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Today, I'm interviewing a friend of very long standing. I don't want to say an old friend for obvious reasons, Mr. Brien Lundin, who is editor and publisher of Gold Newsletter, and importantly, in the context of today's talk, the promoter and producer of the venerable New Orleans Investment Conference, the granddaddy of all investment conferences. Brien, welcome, and thank you for taking some time out of your day to talk to us.
Rick, it's always a pleasure. If I have any time at all and you want it, you got it. I really appreciate your friendship over all these years, advice, counsel, mentorship, and help in getting the story out about this year's New Orleans Investment Conference.
I was thinking before this interview about how I might describe my relationship with the conference. I've, of course, been a speaker, an attendee, but I like to say, really, going all the way back to 1987, which is the first year that I remember attending the conference, that I've been a beneficiary. It has really, truly been an amazing conference with a wonderful legacy. Let's start off, Brien, by telling people when and where this conference will occur this year. The where is fairly obvious, but tell us the logistics before we begin with the content.
Yeah, it will be here in New Orleans. That's why we're kind of anchored to this city, because we can't change the name. But it will be October 12th to 15th this year, a little over a month from when we're speaking right now. I believe you'll probably have a link to share with them, but if not, they could always go to neworleansconference.com very simply. And it runs from a Wednesday afternoon to a Saturday evening, and which is our typical day plan. And it is packed wall to wall with information and insights from 7 in the morning to well into the evening. There will be great content, great speakers, great opportunities to learn.
So one of the hallmarks of the New Orleans Conference, probably the hallmark, other than the fact that you can have a good time in New Orleans if you try hard, has been the incredible content, the incredible speakers that you've had over time. I mean, going all the way back to the last public appearance of Ayn Rand, as an example, and numerous luminaries that you don't often have access to through conventional media. So let's talk, Brien, about who, first of all, you have as keynote or featured speakers this year. And then you and I can talk about what in particular we'd like to learn from those people.
Yeah, it's a long list, Rick. And one of the things I've tried to do over the last few years is get away from the big name political speakers and focus more on value and content, the bench strength, as it were. Maybe I'm getting old and I'm getting more cynical, and my disgust with the politicians has risen to a certain degree. But I think that we live in an extraordinary time right now. None of what we're seeing in the markets and the economy is normal. And I think that these extraordinary times have brought up some extraordinary people to comment on them and to give their views and to explain why this isn't normal and what the repercussions may be. Now, one of my top speakers this year is Jim Grant. And of course, he's been in the business longer than even you and I, and is the most eloquent, I think, and insightful commentator on the markets out there today and for decades. And frankly, I'm getting Jim Grant whenever I can get him. And we've got him this year. And he'll be there in person. Of course, we have you, and they're another one of our highlight speakers, and we're putting you to work, giving a number of presentations and panels, et cetera. We have Jim Rickards, brilliant guy, as you know, really one of the smartest guys out there. Peter Bookvar, I think, is one of the smartest people out there these days, commenting on the markets. Danielle DiMartino Booth, the top, I believe, expert on Fed policy, which is driving all markets. Brent Johnson, who's been proven right with his dollar milkshake theory and is also a big gold advocate as well. Our friend Doug Casey, who knows what he's going to say, but he's guaranteed to aggravate at least half of our audience, and he'll call that a success. Jim Iurio, very outspoken commentator who, I don't want to say he was drummed off of CNBC, but he escaped the bounds of their implied censorship and now is speaking freely. Really smart guy. Talk about speaking freely. Dave Collum, chair of chemistry at Cornell, and thank goodness he has tenure, because he's a brilliant person who has views on a lot of topics, and now he can't be fired for voicing them. So he never holds his tongue. George Gammon, one of the best financial educators out there today. John Najarian, a great presence on CNBC, but also a real advocate on the future of money and digital currency. Tavi Costa, who does some of the best technical work I've seen on the markets out there. Lawrence Lepard, another big gold bug. Dominic Frisby, who's actually part-time stand-up comic and commentator on the markets as well. He's going to be a great pleasure to see. Adam Taggart, who's a wonderful moderator for some of our panels. Jim Stack. I think Jim's one of the most accurate and smartest commentators out there today. He's been around or spoken at our conference many times over the years, but hasn't in a number of years. And we're happy to welcome him back. And the list goes on and on. Bob Proctor, Adrian Day, Mark Skousen, Brent Cook, Omar Ayales, Nick Hodge, Lobo Tigre, the Aiden sisters, the real estate guys, on and on and on. Dozens of today's top experts, all in one place at one time.
I mean, that's a very, very, very impressive list. I can say as a conference sponsor, I'm envious and beholden to you for being able to cram all that content into 3.5 days. So I'd like to talk about a few of these guys, because some of the people listening to this may not be familiar with them.
Yeah.
I echo your thoughts about Jim Grant. To me, Jim Grant is probably the most thoughtful and the most eloquent commentator on applied financial markets, which is to say policy as it applies to making money, that I've seen. He's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I remember introducing him at my conference, and I was a pathetic little fanboy. I was enjoying the fact that he was at my conference so much that for the first time in my life, I was tongue-tied. I know you've had him at your conferences before, and I can't stress enough to members of the audience of this interview today that Jim Grant is he's an absolute treasure. I don't know what else to say about him.
I totally agree. And, you know, he's one of the few people left in this market who really appreciates the true role of gold in society. And not only has he read all the classical books on free market economics and the history of gold, but he's written a good number of them. So you assume he must have read them too. But he really is brilliant. So he has this classic background that harkens back to, you know, a lot of the old hard money advocates, the brilliant writers that we kind of grew up with in the industry in the 70s and 80s, in that underground media of the newsletters. And Jim Grant was part and parcel of those, and he's still around. And I remember when he was kind of a younger buck among that pantheon of great writers. But he was smart enough even back then where barons got him to write for them, and just absolutely eloquent. And you're right, you hang on every word, because it's not just wonderful insights, and it's not just well put, well thought out and eloquent insights, but pretty damn funny too. I mean, just absolutely entertaining and enlightening.
I remember listening to him speak, and I had the pleasure to listen to him speak, and my seatmate was Doug Casey. And I remember Doug and I laughing so hard during the speech that we were both laughing. I mean, both crying. And the thing that really brought me down is he was talking, he being Jim Grant now, not Doug Casey, he was talking about negative real interest rates, about the interest rate being less than the rate of the destruction of the currency. and he described the US 10-year Treasury, which is, of course, the world's benchmark security, as constituting return-free risk. And that turn of phrase, rather than risk-free return, I remember, I mean, first of all, it was completely accurate. And I remember laughing till I was catatonic at that wonderful turn of phrase. He was able to say so much with 3 words.
Yeah. And that's one of his more famous quotes, but he's got so many of them. And you literally hang on every word. And sometimes it's very sophisticated humor that you just love it when you get the joke. And our audience typically does. But he's brilliant. I remember corresponding with him right before your event, where he was talking about gold at $25,000 an ounce. And I remarked to him that, and this is one of the key questions we asked him at your conference, that when that day comes, Jim, will we'll be lighting our cigars of $100 bills while our assault rifles are draped over our knees? And so do we really want to see that day? And I just saw, literally before I walked in to do this this interview, and the title of his speech is going to be, I think, Gold at $250 an ounce. So that will be entertaining.
Well, he's learned at age 75 how to play to an audience too, finally.
Yeah. Well, he is one of the original gold bugs.
Let's move on to Doug Casey, because Doug Casey has been a standout at your conference for years. And I understand the risk that you run as a conference sponsor, having Doug Casey on stage. You never know when he's going to insult your audience or insult your exhibitors. What I've always found unique about Doug Casey is that he has an absolutely original mind.
Yeah.
Doug Casey can cause me to think about things in a way that hadn't occurred to me. I recall going into a meeting with Doug Casey, a due diligence meeting, when he and I were both interrogating a mining company. And right in the middle of the meeting, Doug says, "Let's leave. Let's go." Like right in the middle of the meeting.
Yeah.
And I said, "Doug, what's this about?" And he says, "Well, look right here. These guys don't own any stock." He says it's right in front of the management team. They don't own any stock. They're salary slaves. Why would they work hard to make us money if they're not going to make any money at all? That original thinking is, I think, what makes you watch Doug Casey. Whether you agree with him, whether or not he puts as much energy into a speech as he ought to put in sometimes, the way that the guy thinks is just astonishing. I'll give you another wonderful Doug Casey anecdote. He and I were in Zimbabwe together, meeting the mines minister in the early 90s. And the mines minister was a very affable guy, a huge guy. I mean, just an enormous guy. He filled the whole room, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at one point, in what was a fairly boring, affable lunch, because in those days, Zimbabwe was trying to attract foreign investment rather than repel it, Doug says to this mines minister, "This must be an interesting episode for you." The mines minister politely says, "How so, sir?" And Doug says, "Well, given that you're in government, you 10 years ago almost had to be a freedom fighter. Had you not won, you would be called a terrorist." And I'm thinking, "Doug, you didn't say that." But he did. And he said, "Now, here we are in Bulawayo. I imagine 10 or 12 years ago, if Rick and I had been in town, your job would have been to try to figure out how to kill us. And now you have to buy us lunch and get us to invest in your country. This must be interesting for you." And I thought, we're in real trouble. And this mines minister cracked an enormous smile. And he said, "Mr. Casey, it's ironic, but I was having exactly that thought at the same time you said it." And I have to say, at this stage in our lives, having lunch is much more pleasant than doing battle. This is obviously going to become a very interesting lunch. The beauty of Doug Casey, and what I think that the attendees have to look forward to, not just listening to him speak in the general session, but also having the opportunity to speak with him in the hall, what you do at the New Orleans conference will be worthwhile. And I hope you concur with that.
Yeah, I do, especially when you get him to speak extemporaneously. And we do have him on a couple of panels, our geopolitical panel, which he's always a hoot at, and on our closing panel that you and I will be on as well. And yeah, I will be on pins and needles because you never know what's going to come out of Doug's mouth. He considers it a success if half of the audience loves what he said and the other half of the audience is looking for rotten tomatoes to throw at him. So he tries to play it right down that middle and generally succeeds. But I know what you mean. He is like my old friend and mentor and business partner, Jim Blanchard, in that he looks at the world from a slightly different angle from everybody else. So he sees different things. And Jim was famous for that too, calling a meeting to an end. And I had to always clean up the damage after him. But yeah, good times. And Doug will always tries to outdo himself every year at the New Orleans conference, and he's looking forward to it this year.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun seeing Jim. Doug's. I noticed that you have Jim Rickards back, who's always been one of the stalwarts at my conference. What I really like about Jim Rickards is that he talks about the establishment from having been inside of it. General counsel is example for long-term capital management.
Yeah.
When it blew up,
Yeah.
sort of like a newscaster from the belly of the beast. So perhaps you could tell our audience what they might look forward to and why you hired Jim Rickards to speak for you.
Yeah, the first I had him, God, I don't know, 10, maybe 15 years ago. I think our event was the first time he had ever spoken at one of these investment conferences, kind of came out of the establishment and became more anti-establishment. And he did a workshop, and there was a line outside the workshop, which was packed full, stretching down the hallways. And he has such a depth of knowledge of virtually every subject that you can tell when he speaks just off the cuff with anecdotes and evidence, just quoting off the top of his head, that he really knows what he's talking about. And both you and I have been in this business for decades. We've seen a lot of smart people cross the stage and speak. And we know who really gets it and who is really, insightful, has the right insights, really knows what they're talking about. And Jim absolutely qualifies in that. The way that he can speak off the cuff with such intelligence and depth. And, at your event, his presentation, there were 2 or 3 things he said that really, after all my years in the business, I had not considered and was valuable new information for me and changed the way I look at things.
I'll be excited too to the part of your conference that isn't big picture, the part about the investment where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
I'm delighted that you have Adrian Day back. I've listened to, I think, every talk Adrian has given in New Orleans since 1987. And I'm delighted to say I've learned something in every one of them. Adrian is a wonderful money manager. He's become, of course, a wonderful friend of mine. And my hope is that his charge is international investing and natural resource investing, but perhaps you could talk about what you see Adrian adding to the party.
Yeah, I remember meeting Adrian for the first time, I think, in 1986 at the conference. And, he's going to be a very good friend, but he is so, first off, he's British, so everything he says sounds so much smarter. But it is smart, and he is become not only he always gives a wonderful presentation, but he's a great moderator of our panels, and we have him on a few panels this year, including also the closing panel. He's going to be moderating that. But he has a depth of experience and knowledge across all of the markets and globally that I don't think anybody can compare with. I will always have him at our conference. He doesn't speak at that many conferences. You don't get to meet him that often, except at like our events. But he's just absolutely brilliant, and a lot of fun too, and kind of like Jim Grant, eloquent and funny at the same time.
And then speaking, of course, about where the rubber meets the road, the current malaise in junior resource equities presents a wonderful opportunity, in my view. I'll be looking to discuss with some of your exhibitors the ability to do private placement investments with them. I see the prices of these things falling far enough.
Yeah.
They're very attractive to me. two of my favorites in the junior resource space, Brent Cook, who used to work for me, and Lobo Tigre, who I regarded as a protege before he became a peer, will be talking. And I like the fact that you, in addition to having all these big picture gurus, deliver value to your attendees where the rubber meets the road. So congratulations for that part of the faculty too.
Yeah, obviously longtime friends of both you and I. And, you know, the New Orleans conference, we talk a lot about that. We cover all of the markets. We probably cover more geopolitics than a lot of other events, a lot of broad picture macroeconomics than a lot of other events. But we've always been known as a gold conference because that's what we were founded as a venue to teach investors how to invest, American investors, how to buy gold, how to invest in gold, having been a big part of just having gotten gold legalized in the United States. So we've had that thread run through our event over the decades constantly. And of course, that means junior mining. You know, we're located across the street from a casino in New Orleans, but I tell people they don't need to walk across the street. Don't bother with the traffic. Just walk across the hall. And that's, there's our casino. But it also represents opportunity and a place where you can meet these company managements and talk to them face to face. As part of that, I tell people that it's an inefficient market and you can put the odds more in your favor by taking the time to talk to the companies, but also taking the time to subscribe to the best newsletters, listen to those people. And if someone's appearing at our event and on our stage, they've got my stamp of approval as one of the best out there. Now, Brent and Lobo certainly don't need my stamp of approval. They've been around for a long time and proven their worth. And they take an approach that is, you know, much more technical, much more deliberate than a lot of people, probably, well, definitely a lot more than even I do. And the companies that they vet and look into are worth your time. One of the things that they do at each event is talk to you not only about how to invest in junior mining stocks, but also which ones they like and they're buying, specifically which ones they're buying. So they are telling you where they're putting their money, and that's immensely valuable.
Now I want to talk about, I guess, the intangibles at the conference, and I'm going to tell you a little anecdote that I haven't told you. It's going to warm your ears. Very recently, I attended the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame dinner to induct Bob Quartermain to the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. And Bob reminded me that his business relationship with me, Silver Standard, was a direct outcome of the New Orleans Investment Conference. Jim Blanchard saying to me he wanted to structure the most leveraged silver investment in the world. Me talking to Bob Quartermain and having Silver Standard come of that, a company that had a pre-conference market cap of 1.8 million Canadian dollars that ended up with a market capitalization of $4 billion US dollars. Mm-hmm. That was one nice anecdote about the New Orleans conference, but seated at the table to induct Bob Quartermain, right next to me, was Mark Bristow, who I met as a consequence of meeting Adam Fleming at the New Orleans Investment Conference, reorganizing a little mining finance house that was called Cons Mine at 10 cents a share US, and having Rand Gold and Exploration ultimately spun out of that, which became, of course, Barrick, the second largest mining company in the world. And it was highly amusing to me sitting at this table, watching all of these people who I had grown up with at the New Orleans conference that have become inductees into the Canadian Mining Hall of Fame. The point of all of this is that a lot of the work that you do at a conference like this isn't just general session speakers. It's meeting with up and coming exhibitors. It's meeting with other attendees, like in this case, Adam Fleming. It's a wonderful opportunity to absorb yourself in both paradigm and opportunity. And I would urge attendees not just to work around the general session speech, but to work the whole conference.
Yeah, you do. I tell people all the time, and in my opening remarks, I always tell the audience that, we're going to have some incredible speakers and experts from the stage, but look around you in the audience, and what you are going to find are people who, by their very presence at this event, have self-identified as very smart, independent-minded, maverick, successful investors who, at this event, because you're in kind of a destination event, everybody, very few people are from New Orleans. They've all traveled to this wonderful city and gathered together, and it's a meeting of minds and an intellectual energy that's at this event that you just don't find anywhere else. And everybody's willing to share their views, and you will be standing next to the bar, the buffet table, next to a billionaire who you will not have no idea that they're a billionaire, because they're going to be dressed in casual clothes, have no airs about them whatsoever, and discussing the events of the day and discussing the markets with you on an equal level. And there's so much to learn there from the other attendees. And you're talking about, between Bob Quartermain, who was cursed with having to deal with some of the biggest silver and gold bugs throughout his career. I mean, you remember Jim Blanchard constantly on the phone with Bob Quartermain. Are we at 1 billion ounces yet, Bob? It looks to me like we're at 1 billion ounces. And Bob would have to say, no, Jim, we have to do official resource estimates. They make us do that. And we're not quite at 1 billion ounces. And I remember Bob sending me an email one time. This was even, unfortunately, after Jim had passed, finally telling me we'd gotten to 1 billion ounces. And Jim had thought we'd gotten there 5 years earlier. But yeah, and Mark Bristow was, we, along with you, helped him start Rand Gold, and Ian Fleming. I mean, one of the best, not Ian Fleming, Adam Fleming. He manages the Fleming money, his uncle Ian. But yeah, he's one of the greatest gold bugs I've ever had the pleasure to meet, and a long time attendee at our event. And our event's full of not only the giants of the industry, but the future giants of the industry.
So, Brien, you're going to work me pretty hard this year, which I appreciate.
Yes, I am.
People who are readers and subscribers of mine will be blessed, if that's the right word, with a general session talk, which I'm really looking forward to. I've had very good luck in New Orleans talking about specific companies. I don't know why that is, but I've had great luck in New Orleans. I'm going to do a really applied workshop this year. I think we're coming into a private placement cycle, and I'm going to do private placement boot camp in my workshop, which I hope is going to be fun. I think I'm moderating the mining share panel.
Yes, you are.
Okay, which I really look forward to. And I'm going to do a special subscriber event just with my own people on the last day, which I look forward to. And I've decided about 30 minutes ago that given that you've delegated the exhibit hall tour to other people, to do my own informal exhibit hall tour. So anybody who wants to accompany me through the exhibit hall, where I ask nosy questions of exhibitors who I think can answer them correctly, is invited to participate in that on an informal basis. That's my own commercial for Rick Rule. But Brien, in closing, tell us something about a couple of the panels, because I think the panel discussions in New Orleans have been particularly good. Very often at conferences, these are just idiotic free-for-alls, waste of time. But you've always managed to have pretty good moderators and pretty good panels. So tell us something about the panels that have you excited, particularly, of course, mine.
Particularly yours. Yeah, I take a lot of pleasure in putting our panels together. Over the years, we've had, obviously we have we've had panels on the economy. We have a geopolitical panel that are a lot of fun. Recent years, I started having a boom, bust, and bubbles panel featuring some of our great speakers to address that, because that's exactly what we're seeing a lot. And I'm looking at our schedule right now. I don't have a list of the panel participants on there, but you can bet that they are a lot of fun. We have, of course, the mining share panel, which is where you get a lot of the meat and potatoes of the conference that everybody's looking for, the actual mining share picks, not only our views, but some of the top experts out there giving you their top picks in that volatile market, of course. We have a future of money panel that's a lot of fun, talking about not only gold, but also crypto and some top experts in that area. We have our closing panel this year, which is going to be wonderful because you're going to be on it. I'm going to be on it. Doug Casey, Adrian Day, and Mark Skousen. So this is a panel that I like to sit on because it makes me feel young. But I think it's also going to be a lot of fun and put a bow on everything we've heard over the preceding days. So
Brien, I'm struck by the fact that you've used the word fun several times. And one of the things that's always appealed to me, one of the things, frankly, I've always envied about the New Orleans Investment Conference is your ability to make some fairly dry topics fun. I want to say, for those people who haven't been to the New Orleans conference, that the conference itself is fun. And New Orleans is a lot of fun. If you apply yourself, you can have fun after the conference is over. I personally am intending to take my wife for our anniversary to Galatoire. I'm personally looking forward to taking some of the speakers and the exhibitors out to Commander's Palace, out in the Garden District. I'm personally looking forward to eating a couple of lunches right next door to the conference at Grand Isle. Perhaps you could talk to the audience about a few things as a local that you think that they ought to do in conjunction with, not as a substitute for, the New Orleans conference.
Yeah, the content of the conference itself is incredible, and so many of our attendees never leave the hotel. And much as I and our exhibitors appreciate that fact, they really do need to get out and get to some of these restaurants. And in the final member benefits package that we'll send out to everyone, we'll have some of our personal favorite recommendations of restaurants in the area. Obviously, great food and great music, and we'll have a lot of that at the conference. When I kind of inherited this event from Jim Blanchard, I inherited a lot of his largesse, expected largesse, at the buffets, the open bars, etc. Just that at the event, they are going to get a real taste of New Orleans. Our closing dinner will feature James Rivers' movement. Again, I will have him, as long as he's able to stand up on stage, or at least belt out through all the wind instruments that he's able to blow through. I will always have him from here on out. He is just amazing. He is Clint Eastwood's favorite musician, by the way, and for a reason. And he's kind of undiscovered. People don't really, at least in the United States, don't really appreciate him. We will have him at our closing dinner and right after our closing panel. So New Orleans is replete with restaurants. If a restaurant has been in business and survived for more than 3 months, it is one of the most extraordinary dining experiences you will likely have. So I encourage everyone to come down and enjoy everything that New Orleans has to offer.
Well, Brien, from the bottom of my heart, I encourage my listeners and readers to do the same thing. I've been a beneficiary, as I say, of the New Orleans conference going all the way back to the mid-'80s, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you down there this time. I want to congratulate you for the success that you enjoyed in last year's conference against all odds.
Yeah.
Various challenges, and I look forward to being a beneficiary of the 2022 New Orleans conference. Brien, thank you for your efforts on behalf of my former clients and my subscribers for all this period of time. Thank you for your friendship. I look forward to seeing you down there.
I appreciate your friendship and your help, and looking forward to seeing you, Rick. And I urge everyone to register now because our room block is going to close very soon. So don't hesitate, don't delay, sign up now.
Ladies and gentlemen, do your balance sheet and your sense of humor a favor and come on down to New Orleans. Thank you, Brien. We got to go now.